All right. Good evening, Taos County. I am Darian Fernandez, your Taos County Democratic Party chair, and it's a pleasure to be here tonight with a couple of distinguished guests who have been leaders throughout the state in really promoting voting. It's election season again. We have an election very important for our state and our country coming up in November. And we have with us tonight our Secretary of State, Maggie Toulouse, who has been at the forefront of voter rights issues since the day she was elected as Bernalillo County Clerk in 2007. And New Mexico is fortunate to have her as our Secretary of State now. And the nation is fortunate to have her as the new president of the National Association of Secretaries of State. Maggie has been a huge proponent of vote by mail and ranked choice voting and other efforts to increase the voter rolls so that people can be heard and participate in our electoral process. So Maggie, thank you very much for being here tonight, and we'll turn it over to you in a minute. I also want to introduce tonight the Democratic Party of New Mexico field worker for District 3, Sophia Garcia George, who will speak for a minute about efforts to get out the vote in northern New Mexico and the need for some interns. And before I turn it over to Sophia, I want to thank George Brown for helping us get the word out as always and helping us as the county party treasurer to be able to set up events like this. And I want to thank our vice chair, Anjanette Brush, for providing some technical support, and our secretary, Annette Ariano, for helping to get the word out too. So Sophia, why don't you start first and tell us what you're looking for from northern New Mexico, please.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on the call today. I'm so honored to be here, and I'm so excited to be, talking to all of you and learning from all of you as well. So my name is Sophia Garcia George. I'm a new field organizer with the New Mexico Coordinated Campaign. So we're going to be working to get Democrats elected up and down the ballot all across the state. My organizing areas specifically include the areas of Los Alamos, Taos, and Rio Arriba. I'm currently an undergraduate at Columbia University in New York, but I'm taking a year off to work in local politics this semester and get Democrats elected. I'm really excited. My family is actually originally from Santa Fe. My grandfather, Silas Garcia, was a state representative, and now I'm super excited to be involved in New Mexico politics and working with you all. So we as a party have now sort of completed organizer onboarding. That was just last week. And now we've started to set up all kinds of events, from hard skill training to virtual office openings to phone banks and a lot more. But this year, the New Mexico Coordinated Campaign is doing a really exciting thing. For the first time, we're having a paid fellowship program. So we're incredibly thrilled to be offering this opportunity. And if you know anyone that would be interested, this is going to be a sort of $15 an hour, 15 hours a week program. So ideal for anyone looking for a part-time job in organizing. Please have them apply by sending their resume to admin@nmdemocrats.org. I'll put all this information in the chat. You can also have them email me directly at sophia@nmdemocrats.org, or feel free to call me or text me at my cell phone number, which is 505-216-6745. Again, all that info will be in the chat below, so don't worry about writing any of that down just yet. And really, I just want to thank all of you so much for being here. We're so incredibly lucky to have volunteers like yourselves helping us out in Taos and also across the rest of the state. I'm really looking forward to working with all of you in the future to help keep New Mexico blue. And again, feel free to reach out to me with any questions or concerns or suggestions that you have for myself or for the party. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Sophia, for your work in helping to turn out the vote in New Mexico. This is a critical election year, and in New Mexico in particular, we've seen some changes come through the state special session that our Secretary of State will talk about shortly, and some additional efforts to make sure that every voice is counted in New Mexico. So Sophia, you're part of this effort. Thank you very much. We look forward to working with you. And Secretary of State Oliver, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Darian. Hi, everybody. It's great to be with you, although I wish we were in the little Democratic headquarters with the air conditioners, which if you all have been with me at a meeting there, you know how much I love them, because there was one time that I was so sweaty I could, barely move before the air conditioners. But I'm really happy to be with you here today over Zoom, at least. I want to give just to echo a little plug that Sophia made for the coordinated campaign effort. Really, it's probably one of the best things that we do, and this is me with my political hat on for a minute, as a Democratic Party, is come together and try to help elect Democrats up and down the ticket, because at the end of the day, it's all about, sorry, that was my cat jumping off the table that made me shake there for a second. It's really all about turnout and getting, contacting those voters, making sure that they know where, when, and how to cast a ballot, that they're registered. And just, Sophia, just a little note of common bond and warning for you. I worked my way through college and grad school on campaigns and worked on numerous coordinated campaigns here in New Mexico during those years. And I actually left my PhD program in 2004 so that I could just focus on, at that time, what I thought was the greatest existential threat to this country, George W. Bush. Little did we know that come 2020, we'd be fighting a new existential threat. But I didn't go back until, personal announcement, starting this fall, I am going to be starting back to my PhD program in political science, which you might think is terrible timing, and it is. And thankfully, the UNM Political Science Department is being very generous with kind of giving me an ease back into the program. But Sophia, do not let it take you 15 years to go back and finish your degree. I know that you won't. And if there has ever been a year to take a break, this is it, right, between the pandemic and the campaign. So thank you for doing what you're doing. I know that everybody in Taos is going to be wonderful for you to work with, because as you all know, as I always tell you, Taos Democratic Party, you are all amazing. Taos County is amazing. And Taos County really turns out in votes, and it's really because of the work that you all do. So, therefore, I think it's important, and thank you, Darian and George, for inviting me to be here tonight to talk about how things are going to work, we think, as of now, this fall. Because as, just a little bit of a review, as you all will recall, we were busily preparing for the primary election this spring when the pandemic came to New Mexico. And of course, things shut down here very quickly. And of course, I and my office and our county clerks had to make some really tough decisions really quickly about how are we going to keep people safe and also make sure that everybody who wants to vote can cast their ballot. The one thing that we are bearing in mind through this entire election year is that nobody should ever have to sacrifice their health for their ability to vote, and vice versa, right? We should be able to have both. We should be able to protect ourselves, stay healthy, and cast that ballot. So that is our #1 priority in the Secretary of State's office. I can tell you it's every single county clerk's #1 priority this year, including your wonderful county clerk, Ana Martinez. And so that's what we're going to do first and foremost. A bit of a recap on the primary, and I want to share just for a couple minutes some of the challenges we had, but also some of the successes we had at a statewide level. The challenges are obvious. How do we, in this locked down environment, conduct this election? And so, as many of you may know, 27 of the state's county clerks, including Ana and I, went before the Supreme Court, and basically we did something extraordinary. We said, look, these are extraordinary times. They call for extraordinary measures. The legislature is not going to meet, so Supreme Court, we're coming to you. And what we're doing is we have procedures already set forth in the election code for how to conduct an election through the mail, primarily through the mail, with mailing out of ballots to every single registered eligible voter for the primary, and still standing up some in-service locations, because we know that there are always going to be voters that need those in-person services, whether it's language translation or disability assistance, or because they never got their ballot, right? But unfortunately, the Supreme Court said, look, here's the deal. The law is the law, and unfortunately, COVID or no COVID, we do not have the authority to change the law. So we went back to the drawing board, and what happened then, unfortunately in this case, is that at that point we did not have a uniform statewide plan. So it came down to each and every county clerk, in most cases working together with my office, to determine what is the best balance of having in-person polling places and urging and encouraging absentee voting. As you all probably know, the Supreme Court also mandated that we mail an application for an absentee ballot to every registered voter that was eligible for the election, Democrats, Republicans, and primaries. And that was also both a wonderful thing and a challenging thing. It was wonderful because so many more people participated in this election that may not have, because either they didn't know how to apply for an absentee ballot, they didn't know how to get an application, who to call. Maybe many states require excuses or other kinds of documentation to vote absentee, and maybe folks thought they would have to jump through hoops or something like that. So as a result, the turnout for the primary election statewide, as you all probably know, was astronomical. We had record turnout in the primary election, and this is by the time both of the presidential races were all sewn up, right, in terms of the primary. And as well, we also had record absentee turnout in this election. So 65% of every single ballot cast in the state during this record primary election was cast by absentee ballot. And that's due to the applications being mailed, to the communication that went out to voters, including, I know, quite a bit by the work that you all did there in Taos County. Of course, we also experienced quite a few hiccups along the way, right? Trying to conduct an election, making these changes quickly, sending mail to voters that they were maybe not necessarily expecting to get and didn't understand, challenges between the Postal Service and county clerks and their vendors, and delivery delay times, really caused a lot of challenges. And of course, as you know, there in Taos in particular, we had a challenge with poll workers. One of the biggest problems that we saw, particularly in the lead up to Election Day, was that folks were dropping out, and the folks that were there, had a huge, heavy responsibility, especially those absentee poll workers, because of course there's record absentee ballots coming in, and you have, folks that are working themselves to the bone all day long and just becoming exhausted in the process, right? So we looked at all of these things that happened, challenges with the Postal Service, challenges with regard to folks understanding how to apply for their absentee ballot application, polling locations around the state that were being moved and closed and consolidated, how do we make sure voters know where they can go? When you get your absentee ballot, maybe you had to wait a long time. How can we better inform voters about where the ballot is in the mail if they ordered one through the mail? What do we do with it now? Do I return it through the mail? Is there enough time, or should I drop it at a polling place, which means basically I just have to go stand in line at a polling place anyway, which is what I was trying to avoid, right? All of these different things presented new and challenging issues because we had so many people voting by mail for the first time in this election. So of course, as soon as we got through the election, which again, I think despite the challenges that the pandemic really caused at the end of the day, was quite successful at a statewide level, we still knew, my office and state legislators and county clerks knew, look, there are some things that we really have to fix for November. Because here's the reality, I think we've all come to accept in the last month or two that COVID is not going away anytime soon. I think we all were envisioning having that nice summer break, right? I had canceled a vacation in June and I scheduled one in August, and now that one's definitely not happening either, right? Because I can't be quarantined for 14 days when I get back, right? Don't want to expose myself to virus. As we all know, the tendency of these kinds of viruses is to really flourish once the weather gets cold again. So that's the new reality that we're working in. And so we very much, as election administrators, anticipate the run up to the election and election day to be under very challenging pandemic conditions. Of course, we don't know exactly what those are going to be yet, right? Are we going to go back into full stay-at-home mode? Is there still going to be some partial opening like we're experiencing right now? So one of the things that we knew for sure before we went into the special session in June was that we needed some flexibility in the election legislation to help us manage the election as the conditions were changing on the ground. So some of that is very beneficial. It's very beneficial to us as election administrators to be able to have certain tools in our toolkit and certain trigger points that if and when pulled, we can put different plans into action to try to mitigate the conditions that are on the ground. One of the challenging aspects of that is making sure there's enough time to plan and enough time to inform the public. So that's the piece that we're working on right now in the Secretary of State's office is what is our overall plan, what is plan A, and then what are our contingency plans and when do those go into effect and how do we communicate about them? And then secondly, if we are going to employ certain tools or certain opportunities in the voting process, how are we going to make sure that that is successful and that voters know about it? So let me talk here for a few minutes about what was in the legislation and what is definitely going to happen and what are some of the possibilities. So Senate Bill 4, first and foremost, was a temporary and is a temporary measure. It is for the purpose of addressing procedures for the November 2020 general election. It doesn't have permanent effect, but there are aspects of the bill that we do hope will have a permanent effect. Just as an aside, many of you may have been following that bill as it progressed. It did go through the legislative sausage grinder. The bill that came out of the legislature was not the bill that went in. And that wasn't even the bill that I had personally envisioned 2 weeks before the legislative session until lots of different legislators and interests put their feedback into the draft bill. But one provision that actually ended up permanently in the bill is actually a concept that I'm personally in favor of, which is opening up our primary elections to folks who are either not registered with a party, they decline to state, or independent. And it's sort of confusing as to whether or not that was added onto the bill as a measure to try and kill it, sort of a poison pill, if you will, or whether the folks involved really genuinely thought, this may be the only time we can get an open primary bill passed through the legislature. Either way, that piece passed, but it will not come into effect until our next primary election in 2022. So we'll talk more about that at a different time and sort of what the implications are, if there might be a way to improve upon that, if the legislature might get rid of it altogether. But that is the one permanent provision in Senate Bill 4. The rest is specific to November 2020. So first and foremost, let's talk about absentee voting, because of course, absentee voting is, the big topic this election. Excuse me for a second. And of course, I am going to continue to encourage all voters to apply for their absentee ballot and to vote absentee safely from their home. Not only is it better for each and every one of us for our own individual health, not to expose ourselves to larger groups, it's also better for those poll workers that are going to have to work there all day, every day during early voting and all day on election day. And as we all know, our poll worker population does trend to be in the older demographic, which is of course more susceptible to having complications from COVID-19. So in terms of absentee voting, a couple of things just to let you all know about. I get a lot of questions almost every day, including from George, about when we are going to open up the online application portal. For those of you who don't know, we have this wonderful portal on our state website, and you can go directly there at the URL nmvote.org. So if you look up nmvote.org, it'll take you straight to that page. And all you have to do is enter some information about yourself and your birth date and what county you live in, and it will pull up your individual voter record. You can register to vote via this portal. You can update your voter registration via this portal. And for those of you who need to do a registration update to make sure we have your current address so you can get your absentee ballot, please take a moment now or after this or tomorrow morning to update your voter registration on nmvote.org. All you need is a New Mexico driver's license or state ID, current or expired, will work in order to do that. If you can't, if you don't have that kind of an ID, of course you can request a form by calling your county clerk's office. And so you can register to vote there. You can check your voter record, actually see what the current record is for you, what address am I registered at, what party am I registered in, what are the districts that I live in that might be on my ballot this year. When it comes time, which is about 63 days before the election, you'll be able to actually look at and download and print, if you like, a sample ballot, so you'll know exactly what's going to be on your ballot, and you have plenty of time to get your research done on candidates before that ballot comes to you or you go to the polls. But importantly, you can also apply for your absentee ballot there. Now, before you rush to go do that right now, we are still updating the site to allow for online absentee ballot applications. George, do not get mad at me. I told you August 1st. It's actually probably going to be the middle of August when that portal is open. And let me explain why. For those of you who use the online portal to apply for your absentee ballot in the spring, we did get a lot of feedback, a lot of really beneficial feedback about how to improve the site. So we are making those upgrades to the site, including you won't have to enter a full Social Security number to apply for that absentee ballot this fall, but you will have to enter the last 4 of your social. So for any of you, and I know there are quite a few of you out there that have worked with data and databases, you know that once you change something, you potentially break 10 other things. So we have to make sure that the site is working perfectly before it goes online, because the last thing that I want to have happen is for somebody to try and apply for a ballot, and because we have a problem with the site, they're not able to, and they don't get to vote, right? That's my worst nightmare, my worst case scenario. So mid-August, you'll be able to do it that way. Starting now, as you probably know, you can apply for an absentee ballot on a paper form. There's a printable PDF on our website, or I know the party has a copy and can probably distribute one to you. Just email it to you. If you print it out, fill it out, sign it, and put it in the mail to your county clerk, or drop it off at the office if you're able to do that, then you'll be all set. You only need to apply once. You can apply now all the way up until October 20th, which is the deadline for this election. That's another piece of information you need to know pursuant to Senate Bill 4, is we do have that new deadline to apply for an absentee ballot, and it's actually much sooner than it was in the primary election. In the primary, you were able to apply for that ballot up to the Thursday before Election Day. And what we came to find out working with the post office is that that is way too late for them to guarantee delivery of that ballot to you. Their best practice recommendation is 7 days. So from the time you put something in the mail to the time it arrives where it's supposed to arrive, they say 7 days is their guaranteed delivery time frame. So we wanted to make sure that anybody who applied for a ballot got their ballot in time and had enough time to return it in the mail as well. So we had far fewer people having to go and drop their ballot off at a polling location if they were trying to avoid that in the first place. So again, starting now all the way to October 20th, you can apply for your absentee ballot on a paper form by filling it out and sending it to the county clerk. Or if you wait until mid-August, like I'm going to do, once our online portal at nmvote.org is live, you can apply right then, get it done, and then you don't have to worry about it, because all you have to do is wait starting on October 6th, which is 28 days before the election. That is when those ballots will start going out in the mail to you. Now, another feature that we're building into the system that was part of Senate Bill 4 is that we got a lot of feedback that voters were frustrated because they could look on the county clerk's website and they could see that their ballot had been put in the mail to them, but they still hadn't received it, or they had put their ballot back in the mail and couldn't see whether or not, or they could see that, you know, the county clerk maybe hadn't gotten it yet. And that's all the information we have been able to provide up to this point. Has your application been sent to you? Has it been received back? Has your ballot been sent to you? Has your ballot been received back? Now, pursuant to this legislation, we're in the process of implementing something called the intelligent barcode system. Intelligent barcode is what it sounds like. It's a barcode on the envelope that your ballot is being mailed to you in, and also on the envelope that you will return your ballot in. And it will be able to tell you when you log into our nmvote.org system and go to track your absentee ballot, you will be able to see exactly where it is in the mailing process. You will be able to see whether it's actually left the clerk's office, whether it's being processed at your local post office, if it's in transfer to a different office, et cetera, et cetera. So you'll know where your ballot is at all times. And that's gonna help everyone make much better decisions about, you know, should I apply again? Should I go to a polling place and try to request a replacement ballot, which of course you can do if your ballot gets lost in the mail or if something else happens. You can always go and do that in-person ballot replacement request at early voting or on election day. But this intelligent barcode system, we believe, is going to be significantly more helpful. This is also a great service that the party and the coordinated campaign can help provide for folks who maybe aren't internet savvy, don't have great connectivity. You all can use the nmvote.org portal, you volunteers that have access to the internet and are sort of, you know, good computer users, you know, and folks can call you and say, you know, I'm having trouble. I need to find out what's going on with my ballot, and working together with the voter, you can look them up in the system and find out what the status of the ballot is at any time. So that's going to be, I think, tremendously helpful as well. Finally, let's get to the point where we're at election day, or we're in the lead up to election day, and you know, we want to make sure those ballots are getting counted, right, and they're getting counted timely. We know our wonderful Taos County clerk had a lot of challenges with that process, again, in terms of having enough poll officials and you know, having enough time available, right, because this was such an unprecedented election. So Anna is going to be able to start that processing a lot earlier this time to give herself a leg up on getting through a lot of those ballots before election day. We do anticipate receiving a lot of ballots back right on election day. You know, I mean, folks just wait till the last minute. That's the reality. And, you know, one thing that I want to put out there is for those of you who feel safe being in an environment working with other people, you know, with, of course, masks and PPE and all of the sanitizing products you could possibly want that my office is providing for every single county clerk's office. I do want to encourage folks who are willing to serve as poll officials, either for one day on election day or for several days on the absentee board or at early voting. That's going to be probably maybe our number one or top 2 or 3 challenge this election, is going to be having enough folks to get the job done. Folks are understandably nervous and concerned about exposing themselves to the virus. However, you know, if we don't have enough folks, we are going to have problems getting everything counted in time, making sure that the polling places are secure and safe, that the voters who are there are being taken care of in a timely and effective manner. So I do just want to put that plug out for those of you who think you might want to do that. All you have to do is reach out to your county clerk's office, and she will be really excited to hear from you. She'll train you. We will make sure you have all of the personal protective equipment you could possibly need to keep yourself safe. We have social distancing practices and procedures based on CDC recommended guidelines at every single in-person polling location and in those absentee processing facilities. Let's move on from there. I know we're already at 6:30 and I want to leave plenty of time for questions. So I'll just address a couple more very important pieces, takeaways, I think, from Senate Bill 4 that would be interesting for you all to know. For example, the Taos Pueblo. One of the challenges we had with the primary election was making sure that we had adequate opportunities for in-person voting on our tribal locations. And the reason that was a challenge was twofold. First of all, as you all know, every single tribal land, nation, pueblo, reservation in New Mexico became closed to the outside public in light of the pandemic. And so folks were not allowed to go in who weren't either part of that community or who weren't already there in that community. And a lot of our tribal polling locations are also voting convenience centers, what we call VCCs, which effectively means that any voter from the county has to be permitted to vote there. And because we had that conflict in the state law, many of our polling locations had to be moved, that were on tribal land, had to be moved, closed, relocated, etc. And of course, that caused a lot of heartburn, heartache, and confusion for election officials and for the voters in those tribal communities. As a result, we saw really significantly decreased voter participation in our tribal communities in the primary. So what we did in this bill is we put a protection in place that says if you're a tribal community and you have a polling location, whether it be an early voting site, a mobile early voting site, or an election day site, and whether it's a voting convenience center or not, you get to stay open even if you're not open to the outside public, so the voters of your community can still go to that polling place to vote in person, get language assistance, ADA compliance assistance, or drop off their ballot. So we're in the process right now, my office and county clerks, of speaking to all the Pueblo governors, all the other tribal officials for the other tribes in the state to let them know they get to work with their county clerk, make sure that they have the sites that they want and need, and they actually have to sign off in a written agreement with the county clerk if they do decide to make any changes or reduce polling locations in any way. So in that way, we are working very hard to protect the voting rights of our tribal brothers and sisters on those tribal lands, which I feel very strongly about. And I know that this county knows that this is an issue that is of the highest priority to me, is ensuring that voter access in our tribal communities, which are so traditionally underrepresented in our government. So that's another important provision of the bill. The other important provision is that any polling location that is open on election day will be open to everybody. So we won't anymore have this sort of mix that we've had in the past of, you know, election day locations. Certain locations are open to everybody, some are just for one group of voters in a precinct. Any location that's open on election day is going to be a voter convenience center. So no matter where you are in the county, you can find the polling location closest to you. That will be your polling location, and that's where you can go and vote. For any of the smaller communities that wouldn't be able to be voter convenience centers because they don't have internet access, the county clerk is just going to mail them a ballot. So we do have already a small group of individuals who will be automatically mailed a ballot. Lastly, county clerks are going to get to decide whether or not to mail out applications in this election this fall. That is something, again, that I think was successful in many ways in the primary, but it is going to be up to each and every county clerk. And so in your county, if that's something that you all feel strongly that you want Anna to do, I'd encourage you to reach out to her and let her know that. I will be working with her. We will be covering the cost of that postage, so cost will not be an option, but it will be an option for the clerk to decide whether or not they want to do that. There's probably a lot more that I could talk about. You know, it's hard to do in an hour with all of these different things that are going on, but these are, I think, the biggest ticket items that you all need to know as voters and as folks that are going to be helping get out the vote and helping educate voters. And so now I'm available to take any of your questions about what I've already talked about or any other issues related to voting, and have at it.
Okay, I'll be happy to call on people. I have just a couple of things I want to say. In Taos County, 78.4% of the Democrats voted by mail in the primary.
Great job, Taos County.
Great job. We are currently making phone calls to thousands of people, and in the calls, we're asking people if they would like us at our expense to send them enough absentee ballot applications for their families. And so far, we've sent out about 500. So we're doing the work of the county clerk. Anna was supposed to be here tonight. I don't know what happened. Obviously something, I haven't been able to reach her. But she told me that because so many addresses are bad in Taos County, that she had about 2,000 returned back to her when she sent them just to Democrats and Republicans. And that in this election, she is going to only send them to people who requested them last time.
Okay.
That means that our phone calling, unless we get, I mean, I don't know what that means for decline to states and Greens and libertarians. Is she going to send them to them or not? I don't have an answer to that.
No, George, I'll work with her on that because there's actually some specific criteria in the bill that if you are going to do that kind of a mailing, you have to follow, and it is a more expansive criteria. But we can work with her on that, and she certainly is not required to mail to folks she doesn't have a good address for. So that is something we can help take out of that equation. Yeah.
Right, and we have offered to look through those and to see if we can find better addresses and to help with that. So she and I are in a talk about that. But the phone calling is extraordinarily successful and important. I would say 3/4 of the people that we reach want us to send them those, and we're busy writing, stuffing, and mailing, and all of that. And so it's never too soon. And,
No.
we tell them that they're not going to get their ballot until October. Okay, I promised Dan, where are you? There you are. You got the first question, so you can unmute yourself, or Anjanette will do it for you, and go at it, Dan.
Madam Secretary, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We're extremely grateful that you took time out from your busy schedule. My question involves absentee ballots, voting by mail. I voted by mail in the primary. I intend to do so in the general election. But my concern is the signature portion of the absentee ballot. I happen to know that I sign my name in different ways under different circumstances. I have one signature that I use for very minor things like medical permissions or autographs. And I have another one where I try to be a little more stylistic, and that's the signature that, for example, appears on my driver's license. Is there any way that I can make sure that my ballot is going to be counted and not rejected because signatures don't match? And sure. Is there somehow a way on nmvote.org that I might update my actual signature? Could you give me your comments on that? I would certainly appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks, Dan, for the question, because you actually opened the door for me to talk about kind of an important chunk that I left out of the presentation because I didn't want to go on and on. So the first thing that I want to say is in terms of signatures matching, what folks need to know is that what they are checking for when your ballot comes back is that there is a signature. And only if a challenge is raised or there is something really amiss about the signature, and I'm trying to think of what an example of that, like, let's say it was a different name altogether or something like that. Would that be flagged? So let me tell you first about what can happen in the rare instance that your ballot might be rejected based on a signature. And this is going to apply to any absentee ballot that's rejected for any reason. It's really important for everybody to know that there is something that we call a curing process, and that is provided for generally in state statute, but also specifically in Senate Bill 4. You will be getting a notice immediately the next day after your ballot has been rejected. And if there's a reason why they rejected your ballot, you will have the opportunity to cure that. We are writing the procedure of what that looks like right now, whether it can be done over the phone with you giving some personal information, whether it be a written form, whether you have to come show an ID, although that would be very onerous. We're going to try to make it simple and easy in a way that voters don't have to leave their home. So that's the first thing you should know, is that, you know, if it's rejected, that there will be a notice and an opportunity for you to cure that. If, say, the example that you offer holds true and for some reason they go like, well, this isn't Dan's signature, but we don't currently match because we don't currently have signature experts or software in order to do that. The other thing that I wanted to let everybody know on Dan's topic is that we have, thanks to Senate Bill 4, we are drastically simplifying what you need to put on that outer envelope when you return your ballot. If you remember in the primary, it was your signature, it was your printed name, it was a date of birth, the date of the election, this, that, and the other thing. You will only be required to put 2 pieces of information on that outer envelope, and those pieces of information will be covered up while they go through the mail. That is your signature and the last 4 digits of your social security number. The reason for those 2 things, as opposed to all of that other stuff, is first of all, it's much simpler and easier for the voter to understand what's required to have their ballot counted, number 1. Number 2, it's 2 pieces of information that you have, the voter, that the county clerk has, but that the general public doesn't have access to, right? They can't go on your Facebook page and, figure out, your birth date and your birth year and, all of this other, maybe your address, right? So that is going to greatly simplify the process, and we'll have far fewer ballots rejected for lacking the information or not having the correct information. But it is important for you to know that. So Dan, again, thank you for that question. I'm glad I had a chance to bring that up.
Okay, Deb Monroe has her hand up, and I promised her next. So, see you, Rebecca.
Hey, Maggie, thanks, George. Nice to see you. So I didn't used to really buy into too many conspiracy theories, but Donald Trump has kind of like cured me of that a little. I don't know. So I heard a conspiracy theory that the whole defund the post office, let's kill it, is one of the consequences of not the intentions is to screw up the absentee ballot process. So how, dogs are gonna bark here. How is, hey guys, how is the health of the post office, perhaps going to affect, ballots being delivered?
It's a good question, and it is a question I get a lot. So first of all, both at the national level, through our Secretary of State organization, we are in close contact with the highest levels of the U.S. Postal Service. And we have been talking to them about the health and needs of the Postal Service for quite a while now, as well as all the way down to the regional level, who we really just started building a strong partnership with in the last week of the primary election. But what I will tell you is what they've been telling me consistently over and over is that, look, here's the situation. The Postal Service, first and foremost, is healthy. There are challenges with funding, and probably the biggest challenge that they're facing right now is they're facing a massive shortfall in their ability to fund their letter carrier pensions. So right now we have retired letter carriers all over the country that are, potentially in dire straits because they're not going to be able to have their pensions paid out to them as much or as frequently. But in terms of the operating budget of the U.S. Postal Service, they are what's called an enterprise agency. And so almost all of their funding comes from the payments that we all make when we purchase stamps and send something through the mail. They have assured us over and over again that they have the capacity. In fact, what they said is if every voter in every state voted by mail, they still wouldn't even approach what it's like for them at peak season around Christmas and the holidays, right? The challenge that we have in New Mexico is that we have all of these rural areas that don't often have great postal delivery service. We also have parts of the state where the mail actually goes out of the state before it comes back again. We have this issue in far northern New Mexico, probably in parts of Taos County, if not all of Taos County. We have this issue in Doña Ana County where the mail goes actually out to El Paso before it comes back. So what we've done is, in addition to that intelligent barcode, which I think is going to be very useful for tracking, we've formed this really strong partnership with the regional postal service folks. They are really, really dedicated to doing a good job for us in New Mexico this election year. They really want to make sure that any post offices that are having problems or that things are getting stuck at, or any specific areas that are having issues with delivery service, that they are going to be right on top of that. So here's the thing. It's a human, it's a human office, just like any other. We know there will always be challenges, but I feel much more confident actually now going into the general election, now that we have these partnerships in place, than I did even going into the primary. But to the final point, Deb, I don't think it's any surprise that Republicans are always trying to privatize things that the government provides. It would not surprise me if this continues to be something that the Trump administration would try to do, which would be to really hamstring the postal service down the road. I think it's probably not going to happen in the next 3 months, but it might absolutely happen if Trump gets a second term. So one other thing to be terrified of, quite frankly, if he gets reelected.
So can I go ahead and ask my question now, or is it a bad time, George? Am I unmuted? I thought I was unmuted.
You're unmuted, but George is muted.
Oh, okay. Well, my question to you was, if for those of us who were overzealous and already sent in paper ballots because we didn't know when your portal was going to open up, can we still track those paper ballots?
Yes.
Through the SOS portal? That's great, because
Yes.
people think that those of us who are making these phone calls know everything, and we don't. We just do our best to get the answers for them. So thank you.
Sure.
Can I clarify your question for a second? Are you asking, are you able to track the request for a ballot or the ballot?
She said request. I know she meant request for a ballot.
I meant both, that in any phase, whether it's in terms of whether our request for the ballot has been received, and of course, since they went to the county clerk directly, I'm not so worried about that, but just
right.
And being able to check, and I think you just said it was something like October 6th, when, starting from then on, we can check and see if it's been sent.
Right. Yeah, that's right. So what I would expect if you're a voter that sent in a paper application for an absentee ballot, probably what's happening with them right now is they are being, put in, they're being saved and stored in a secure place and sort of, being accumulated in the moment. As the county clerk is getting prepared to start mailing out ballots, they will start entering those into the system, maybe 10 days before, maybe 2 weeks before that October 6th deadline. So right now, if you went to look, you won't see anything there, but I would check, maybe starting a couple weeks before Election Day, and you'll be able to see whether that application's been accepted in the tracker. And from that point on, everything will be via intelligent barcode, because your ballot will be mailed out and returned using the intelligent barcode. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks. Thanks so much for all these little things that you have thought through so carefully. I have one other question. I sent you an email about it, but then I realized you probably haven't gotten it yet.
The visually impaired voters?
Oh my goodness, I am so you've been checking your email that frequently.
I have someone that texts it for me, but yeah, she made sure to forward it to me. So I have a good team. I can't take credit.
Super. Well, thank her too.
Sure.
At any rate, just because, again, people who have various handicaps, including VI or other, wheelchair bound, I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about what provisions or how they can check on that?
Sure. Well, persons with disabilities have multiple options available to them. And first and foremost, if a person with a disability just really needs that assistance from somebody at the polls, they have two options. They can, of course, go to the polls and bring somebody with them who already knows how to kind of help them manage the process. Or we actually have at every single polling location in the state ADA compliant ballot marking device. What that means is they'll check in with a poll official, they'll get their ballot, and really regardless of the disability, I mean, even if you are an individual that's a quadriplegic and you use a sip and puff device, you can use this machine of your own volition to select your candidates, mark those on the ballot. It's basically like a giant computerized pencil. There's a way for visually impaired folks to listen. There's a set of headphones they can put on and follow some commands with some sort of obvious looking, it's kind of like a Nintendo joystick from back in the 80s. Press buttons to mark their ballot. They will be able to verify that their ballot was marked as they selected, and then they can go and of course with the assistance of a poll worker or themselves or with another individual feed that ballot back into the tabulator. But one of the things that we were concerned about was that visually impaired voters had one significant disadvantage from all other kinds of voters that need assistance at the polls, and that is they were not able to vote an absentee ballot privately from their home without assistance. And so if they did choose to vote absentee, they were always going to have somebody assist them, and so their vote would not be secret. So a little over 2 years ago, we passed a bill that basically created a visually impaired absentee ballot system. And most visually impaired voters have special software that they use to access the internet and do all sorts of other things. And using that software, they can access our website. They can apply for an absentee ballot online, just like any other voter. And what happens is they will get their envelopes in the mail, but they will actually be able to download and mark their ballot using the software, the special visually impaired software that they have on their computer, and be able to print it out and put it in the envelope and mail it back. And so that is a special feature that we have just for visually impaired voters. When you go to that online absentee ballot portal, you'll notice there's going to be a little checkbox down there that says, do you need a visually impaired ballot? And we're actually going to kind of flesh out that language, because we think in the primary, a lot of folks thought, yeah, I could use a larger font. That's not what it is. It really is just for visually impaired voters that can use that software. But so they have all of those options available to them. And of course they can have assistance if they want. That's totally their choice. But if they want to do it totally on their own from home, they are absolutely afforded the opportunity to do that.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Marjorie Lucky.
Hi, Maggie.
Hi.
Hi. Nice to see you. Thank you. I have a question about curbside drop-off ballots, because I know this is something that's done in every state that has routine vote by mail. I'm worried about the post office because today I was listening, the new director of the post office has said he's putting in a new rule that if a truck with mail is delayed, they're just going to leave the mail on the floor. The deliverers will go out without the mail coming in from the truck. So there will be delays. I mean, that rule itself will make huge delays in mail. So will you have drop-off ballots where people can just drive up and drop it off, or have, go someplace and hand it to a poll worker or something without having to go and stand in line to drop off their ballot?
The short answer, Marjorie, is that probably. So that's actually one of the procedures that we're working on as sort of a possibility, right? we are developing those procedures, working with the county clerks. How would it work? We also have this pilot project that we've been putting together to put the secure tamper-proof drop boxes, installing them around the state, having video monitoring, et cetera. And so right now we are mostly on track to complete that project. But even if we do get that project complete, we probably won't have enough to go around in the initial, round, right? It was supposed to be a pilot project, so we only have so many to go around that will really meet the needs, I think, to your point, of the community, especially if we have absentee turnout like we did in the primary.
Yeah.
So we are looking at those procedures. It would have to be, staffed by poll officials, and it would be, a locked and tamper-proof or tamper-evident ballot box, and the when, the where, and how of all of that is what we're trying to put together now. If the pandemic is as bad this fall as I think it's probably going to be, I would imagine we will have plenty of those located around the state.
I was just going to say, you could probably get a lot of additional people to volunteer for that particular job, since it would be outside.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be in a closed space or with other people around. So I think you could probably recruit a lot of poll workers who'd be willing to man that box and let people put their ballots in it. So
thank you, Marjorie. That's a great point.
Okay, thanks.
Hold on. Was it you, Maggie, who told me that 2 are assigned, minimum of 2 per county?
Yeah, so with those big, like, steel reinforced, tamper-proof, video monitored, fancy ones, the initial allocation will be a minimum of 2 per county. And then if you're a county that has 4 or more early voting sites, then you will get, half of whatever that number is in terms of a distribution.
Right. So that's 2 for us. And Martinez, I'm so sorry she's not here. She said they're permanent installations, and so they need to be on county property. And the only place that the county has appropriate property is at the county building.
That is the easiest place in a certain sense, because the county can sign off. They can be anywhere that they're permitted to be. And so if we have commercial entities that are willing to allow us to install one on their property, or other government entities that are willing to allow us to do that, that's part of the challenge of launching this initiative is locating all those sites and getting that permission. But she is correct. I mean, once they go in, they're going to be there. And that's the goal, right? To always have a place where you can drop your ballot if that's what you want to do.
So it could be a firehouse or somewhere like that.
Sure.
Okay, one more question, and we're going to call it a night if we've got one more. Anybody? Bueller?
Not, I can just give some closing thoughts.
Give some closing remarks. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, George. I mean, first of all, thank you for setting this up. I'm starting to do these. I think this is the second county one that I've done. So, you're at the vanguard. And I'm really happy to have the opportunity to walk through this with everybody and answer these questions. I mean, really at the end of the day, having a successful election this November is going to be a group effort, right? It's not about what I do in my office or what each county clerk does in theirs, but there's always a very important role for political parties and candidates to play and help getting the word out and getting the vote out. One of the things that I just want to end with is that you all know that misinformation and disinformation, particularly in social media, is at an all-time high. It's very, very, very important, especially with people staying at home and getting so much of their information from the internet and social media, to get the correct information. So I want to charge each and every one of you with the responsibility of, if you see something that doesn't look right that's out there. For example, I saw a very well-intentioned, knowledgeable person post recently a meme that must have come from another state that said, don't forget, if you're mailing your absentee ballot back, it costs $1.10 in postage. And I very kindly wrote to her, no, that's not true here in New Mexico. Please take it down, because we don't want to spread that kind of misinformation intentionally or unintentionally, right? So I think each of you, as you're looking at things, really the message that we are trying to get out from the Secretary of State's office and county clerks is we are the trusted sources of information about the election. And if there's ever a question and there's ever a doubt about what the rules are, point them our direction. My website is super robust. It has a ton of information. Voters can call our office and get a quick turnaround on an answered phone call, or call their county clerk's office to get correct information. That's my final request, my final plug. Help combat the misinformation and disinformation. We know that Russia and other foreign actors are going to be just gearing up those bots to try to pump out all of that incorrect information. If you ever have a question or a doubt, definitely reach out to my office, check our website, check our social media, whatever you need to do to verify, because we want to make sure we have the most educated electorate possible. And with that, I want to thank you so much for having me tonight.
I have one quick question about
Wait,
misinformation.
I have a question too, Maggie.
Okay, sure, yeah. I opened
So
the door.
I'm going to take personal privilege, but we really need to stop.
Okay.
It's voter registration and what you're seeing about voter registration in the time of COVID and how you're going to utilize VRAs.
Oh yeah, so obviously we don't have our traditional, folks standing outside of Walmart, signing folks up to vote, or, at the growers market, those kinds of activities, state fairs and county fairs, right? Like that's just not going to happen this year. Most of you know, again, we have the online voter registration portal at nmvote.org. Same time frame, middle of August. Again, George, I lied to you, but it's going to be mid-August. If you are a VRA, a voter registration agent, you've had the training, you have all those paper forms, and now they're just kind of sitting there collecting dust. You can still help folks register to vote using the online portal, and you'll be able to get credit for that voter using your VRA number, because we're creating this new special VRA portal where you can go in, assist the voter in getting registered, and put your number in there. And that'll be the way, and you can do it over the phone, you can do it in person, you can do it with a laptop or a tablet if you are in person with somebody. But the short and long of it is there are still ways you can reach out to folks and get them registered through that online portal. So thanks for asking that question, George.
Okay, let's applaud and say good night, because I know Maggie has to go too.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Hey.
Maggie.
Maggie.
Hooray.
Bye.
Hooray.
Marjorie just texted me.
Okay, because it's about the nmvote.com.
Oh yeah, okay.
Okay, speak.
Okay, so briefly, it's really important for folks to know our site is .org, and we are going to try to buy up some different other similar URLs like nmvote.com. nmvotes.org was actually sent out to all Bernalillo County voters on accident, so that they will redirect to our site. But to your point, Marjorie, there was a lot of really questionable information on that nmvote.com. That if people thought that was our website, they were really getting sent down some weird rabbit holes.
Yep.
So that's one thing that we need to help get the word out. .org.
.org. Oh, .org.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you, Maggie.
Bye-bye, Maggie.